Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Aquarian Radio. This is an episode of Experiencers Network, and I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin. Our guest today is Clint Wilkinson, and I do have a co-host for the show, Andrew Aloha, but I haven't seen him. He hasn't checked in yet today, so maybe he won't be here today. We'll see. We'll look for him on the board. So Clint Wilkinson is a 63-year-old retired dentist, space exploration geek, artist, writer, husband, father, and grandpa. He's been an experiencer, military abductee, a resident of a deep underground military base, an unwitting time traveler, and a visitor to Mars. He's a vivid dreamer and a seer, and INFJ on the Meyers-Briggs scale, the rarest personality type, a dreamer, a logical thinker, a lover of sci-fi and many kinds of music and beautiful things. He has an empathetic connection to dogs, but not so much with cats. He's had weird barks appear on his arms and legs without explanation. He blacked out in the bathroom at home and ended up in a quite impossible situation. He's experienced mind-to-mind connections with a gray alien and a gray alien mother's ship. And with with one of my former military handlers, he says, over great distances without trying to do so. He's one of the 70, and he received the bite of the golden serpent and lived to tell about it. And he says, I have reason to believe that I am still sane, and a good reason to believe that my very strange story is actually true. And he has a book that's coming out soon, and I can't wait to see it. And I might not spell this or say this right, the Sanagon, unwitting time traveler and a prisoner of the Black Sun. So that one very packed paragraph, I have about 50 questions. Okay, let me bring on Clint. Hold on one second while I unmute him. Okay, there you go, Clint. Welcome to our show. Wow, that is a really packed paragraph.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me on, Janet.
I'm excited. I'm a fellow abductee, contracting experiencer, lifelong. Okay. I've been in an underground base. It's hard to explain that to people. And
yeah.
So where do you want to start? I'm going to just let you talk for a while. I'm going to take copious notes. Get a fresh page here. Okay. Take it away. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into this.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Central Florida on the East Coast. My parents moved down from Georgia when I was almost 6 years old, and they were teachers, and we settled in Palm Bay, Florida, which is about 35 miles south of what used to be called Cape Canaveral. There's still a city there called Cape Canaveral, but now the Space Center is called the Kennedy Space Center. I guess the Air Force has their launches on the Canaveral Air Force Base. But anyway, my friends, my buddies growing up, they collected baseball cards, and I could have cared less who was the leadoff batter for the New York Yankees, but they still put up with me. They hung out with me. I collected stories on the astronauts. My mom helped me make a scrapbook of Glenn and Grissom and Shepard and all those early astronauts. And, by the time I was in third or fourth grade, if my teacher was doing a lesson on the space program, usually she'd ask me to kind of contribute because I probably knew more than she did. So, it's even now still fun to watch the SpaceX launches because a lot of them come back and land at the Cape, and we get a really good sonic boom from them. So I went off to dental school when I was.
What year were you born? Oh, you're 63. Okay, so I'm 55.
So 1955. I was born in October of 1955, and so all of my life, I've been interested in sci-fi. As a kid, I believed that, there were probably intelligent extraterrestrial races out there in the universe. But by the time I went through junior high school, and college, undergraduate as a microbiology student, you kind of get sort of, I don't know what it is, socially programmed, I guess, so that you realize, or you think you realize, that the stars are too far away. Nobody could have ever come to visit here. And even if they're out there, there wasn't any way for them to come to Earth, or we would have known about it. They would have landed on the White House lawn. And so, I guess I just sort of let that all die on me, even though earlier in life it was a real interest. So I went to, I completed my 4 years or 3.5 years of undergraduate, went on to dental school, graduated, went into the Air Force because I didn't know where I wanted to really practice. And my first assignment was Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. And that's where supposedly Eisenhower met with, one of the groups of aliens that he met with back in 1954.
Right.
And, of course, it's not that far from Roswell. Holloman Air Force Base is just right on the border of White Sands Missile Range. When I got there, my sponsor told me this, what I thought was a crazy story, that there were people in town, in the new town that I was settling in, that believed that there was a UFO base under White Sands National Monument. And, of course, I laughed about that. I made fun of it. And then over time, we got to, we settled in. I got into the routine of my military work and my dental work there. And we developed some friends downtown. One night, and I just wish I could go back in time to relive this, because I'd like to change the outcome. But we had some friends over for dinner one night. They were an older couple we knew from church. And Bob and Louise Smith were just really wonderful, nice folks. And Tammy was sitting in the living room with Louise, and I was in the kitchen with Bob, and we were chatting about different things, and I think I must have brought up the UFO thing. Now, Bob, he'd been working for the base as a civil servant, a government servant for years and years and years. He did the graphics for the general's briefings. Back then it was the overhead projector thing, so he created those plastic sheets that gave all the data and the information the general needed each day. And, no PowerPoint back then. But anyway, we were talking about UFOs, and he looked at me and he said, matter-of-factly, he said, well, Clint, I have a friend who's a retired colonel here from New Mexico, and he helped package up the little bodies of the little aliens from Roswell to be sent back to Ohio. And I think I must have snickered. I must have snickered, Janet, because that was the end of the conversation. I wish I could go back and find out more. Yeah, I know. I wish I could have gone back and found out more.
Are Bob and Louise Smith, are they no longer with us, or are they deceased?
I'm sure they would have been in their hundreds and tens by now. So I'm sure they're passed on. Just love those folks. They were great folks. And back in those days, I probably drove through Roswell 4 or 5 times while we were out there 4 years, and there wasn't really any big UFO thing there. There was no tourist element to it, so it really hadn't. I think it was just beginning to really hit the news and be resurrected as a story. So I kind of got there a little.
What year were you? What year was it? What years were you out there?
80 to 84, 1980 to 84.
Okay. I'm getting a timeline here on you. Okay.
So I spent 9 years in the service. I went to Guam for a few years, my wife and I, and we had a couple of kids in the service. We went to South Carolina for 3 years. I got out, went into private practice, and stayed there until just last year. And this past year, I developed a really debilitating disease, which I think really is a part of this story, and I'll hopefully get a chance to get to that tonight. Actually, I know I will. I know I will, because I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm going to give a kind of a prologue of how I came to remember all of these things. So back in December of 2017, I was looking for just an outlet after work to get involved in some kind of community group. And I went on Meetup and I started thumbing through, and I saw that MUFON had the Mutual UFO Network. They had a group down in Palm Bay where I grew up. It's about 20 minutes away from where I live now. I live in Melbourne, Florida now. The other Melbourne, not Melbourne, Australia, Melbourne, Florida.
Right.
And we, so I went to the first meeting, and I kept going for a few months. And I decided, well, this is an interesting subject. I think I'm going to become a field investigator. So I took the training and took the test. I was trying to make 100%. I didn't quite get there. I was a little bit below that, and I was very disappointed. But I started working a couple of cases with our state section director, great man. And I never really thought that I was somebody that had seen a UFO or had had any experience or contact with any sort of alien beings until about, let's see, when was it? May. I had this strangest thing happen to me. I got sick one day, and I was so sick. I was up all night I'd eaten some bad eggs. You're talking
May of this year? Or May of this year or last year?
Last year, I'm sorry, Janet.
May of 2018. Okay, May of 2018.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had eaten some bad eggs that had been recalled, and we didn't know they were recalled, and I got really, really sick. I was up all night. By the mid-morning, I stayed home from work. I was pretty dehydrated, but I was starting to feel a little bit better. So I got up and I went in the bathroom. We don't have a real big master bathroom, and I mean the wall between the bathroom and the bedroom is like right next to the toilet. And so I sat down on the toilet with fully clothed. I was just sitting down so I could pull a drawer out and get some medication. And I took the medicine and I stood up. And I've almost passed out a few times before. And I always get that graying kind of thing in my visual field, the tunnel vision thing. And usually I'll steady myself and I don't pass out. This wasn't like that at all. It was more like when I've had general anesthesia, where you just, you're there for 1 second and then the next second you're just black. And before I blacked out, what I experienced was it was weird. Janet, I felt like I was being drawn, my whole body drawn laterally, not that I was falling, but that my whole body was being moved to the right towards the bathroom door. And like I was being, not really suctioned, but I was being somehow like a magnet being drawn towards the door. The next thing I know, I wake up, and it's like 45, 50 minutes later, and I'm laying on the floor. My body's turned 180 degrees around, and my head is between the wall and the toilet. And I sort of turn my head a little bit, and I look up, and there's the roll, the toilet paper roll right over my head. Now, I know this is kind of crazy, but anyway, I'm looking up at this, and I'm thinking, how did I get down here? Because my arm doesn't hurt, my shoulder doesn't hurt, my head doesn't hurt. If I fell, how come I'm not hurting all over? And if I fell, why didn't I hit my head on the toilet or knock the toilet paper roll off or what? Because there was only a little bit of clearance there. And I measured my head. I've got a big head. And there was only like a 1-inch clearance that would have allowed my head to have made that fall. And so I was just thinking, that's crazy. How did I get down here? And what was that feeling of being drawn towards the door all about? And I don't know that I've even gotten any answers on that. I did pursue some hypnosis later on, but we never got to really addressing that issue. So I don't know what that was. All I know is I've gone back. I've tried to see how I could have fallen, turned my body, ended up in that position. Even if I'd had seizures, I don't think I could have ended up in that position. But, I guess it's possible. I just hadn't figured it out. A month later, I wake up early in the morning, about 3 o'clock, and I'm paralyzed in bed. I can see the room. I can see the dresser at my feet. My wife is laying on my right side. And there's a window, a north-facing window, to the right of me in the bed, and there's some, diffuse light coming in through the vertical blinds. But I'm paralyzed, and I'm trying to move because I know somebody's coming into the room, and I know it's a gray alien. Now, how did I know that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, somebody would say, well, you were dreaming, this was just all a kind of a half dream state thing. There's all kinds of scientific names for it. But the next thing I know, I'm in this dark room, and there's a curved wall to the right of me, and I've gotten away from them, and I'm in a part of the ship, and I'm looking for my wife. I'm frantically looking for my wife. Where have they taken her? And then all of a sudden I'm back in bed, and she's there laying next to me. And off to that, in that north-facing window, there's this. Well, first of all, the next thing that I heard two beings walking on the roof, clear as day, crystal clear, crisp footsteps, and I knew that they were grays. And I didn't see them in the room or anything. And then in that window, that north-facing window, there's this bright light down at the lower left-hand corner, really intensely bright, and it begins ascending up to the upper right-hand corner, and then it's gone, and everything's dark again. So, was that a dream? Was that hypnagogic state, whatever they call it? I don't know, but it was very, very impressive to me. And up to that point, I had not entertained really, other than some occasional strange dreams. I'd had a number of very vivid dreams where I would be outside, the sky would be full of stars, and I'd be looking up thinking, wow, this is so beautiful, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 or 6 of the stars would break away and start wheeling across the sky in a V shape and descending towards the earth, and I always had a feeling of like dread, fear, terror when that happened in these dreams. They were very powerful dreams. And so it's funny, I have a website now that I'm kind of putting together a blog on, and it's called thestarsAreMoving.com. And that's why. Those dreams, the stars were moving. So at any rate, at that point, I'm just thinking this is some weird stuff. And maybe I've been going to too many MUFON meetings.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question, though. Because you had a feeling of dread. Now, when I see the stars moving, I have a feeling of joy and excitement. So let's look at that. Well, I probably would today. I probably would get real excited. And I can't say why I had that feeling. It's just like, why do you experience certain things in dreams? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those unknown things. Okay, so shortly after that is when I started having some really powerful recollections come to me. And, I'm like, I had no idea where these things were coming from. At first I thought, wow, again, I've been going to too many MUFON meetings. I've been watching too many YouTube videos. I got to hang up on Linda Moulton Howe and Richard Dolan and those people, and David Icke and all those guys, but they just kept coming, and it wasn't like I was looking for something, but I started the first little video that played in my head. I was in an elevator, and I was going way, way down into the earth somewhere. I mean, this thing was falling. And I couldn't breathe because there were these 7 or 8 really tall beings in the elevator with me, and they were pressing into me and laughing. And I looked up, and I couldn't barely make out their faces because it was so dark, but I could tell they were reptilian. And I've come to believe that they were, people with, a lot of my friends say that, oh no, they've had good experiences with reptilians, and I don't discount that, but I've heard that the Dracos haven't been as friendly sometimes, and I don't know if this was just a renegade group. This was in my MyLabs, the beginning of my MyLabs experience. So, again, I am not one of those people that's adamant either way. I don't understand enough. I don't know enough. I can only tell you what I think I know, and I don't necessarily have really super strong opinions. I'm not real, doctrinaire on some of these things. It's just the ones I fell in were not nice creatures.
Right. Well, okay, let's look at that a little bit. So when was this dream you had? Was this while you were on the military base working in New Mexico, or?
Nope. This was all started last year.
Elevator dream?
No, it wasn't a dream. I was awake. Yeah. This is after the
awake.
Okay. Yeah, these are all, Janet. These are everything that came to me. Everything I'm going to share with you tonight came to me in waking recollections. They were either just powerful scenes that just popped into my head, or like little videos that would play unasked for. I wasn't seeking any of this stuff. I didn't need any of this stuff to feel good about myself. What were you doing before that waking recollection? Because usually there's something that stimulates it. Yes. What were you doing? Sometimes I was just on my way home after doing 8 hours of dentistry. I was driving home on Interstate 95, and I'd be halfway home, and these things would start coming. Sometimes I'd be at home. I would have been, like praying or meditating for a while, listening to some very restful music. And I've always thought that I can almost achieve sort of a self-hypnotic state myself. So I may have been sort of in that kind of state and been very receptive at that point.
When we're driving, we're in a semi-hypnotic state, because a lot of things are automatic,
Yeah.
So
that's true.
And
that's true.
So you're in a semi-trance because you're still functional. I've had the same thing happen. Like you're by yourself, alone with your thoughts. Maybe you didn't have the radio on that allowed your own thoughts. Did you? You didn't have.
Right.
Did you have any distractions? Yeah. So when you're alone with your thoughts and allow them, then they come. Okay. So you have this, and the reptilians are interesting because I've had encounters with them. And the perception sometimes is that they're hostile, but it's only because they're so terrifying because of their appearance and their energy. There's no filters. They know everything. You're raw. So they know everything you're thinking, because their telepathy is total. Like Greys have little filters. You can't read them. Maybe they can read you, but there's little filters. What I've discovered is and I'm not saying all reptilians, because that's kind of too much to just put everything in one lump, one category. But the ones that I've encountered, now whether they're the Dracos or some other one, I don't know. But I was initially terrified of them. But when I did work on myself, and then we had another encounter, I was just having my own reaction. It wasn't really coming from them. But anyway.
Right.
And some of them, I guess, are nasty. So you're in this elevator, and you're going down, and you don't know you don't remember how you got there. You don't have any.
At that time, I didn't.
Memory.
Now I know. Now enough of the pieces have come to me, have fallen into place that I know how I got there, and so I'll cover that in just a little bit, but maybe I should back up.
Let's go with your sequence.
Maybe I should back up now to what happened to me when I was 3 years old, because really there's two main periods of time. The first was when I was 3 years old and my family was still living in Georgia. The second was my senior year in high school in 1973, when I had my MyLabs encounter. But back in 1958, when I was 3 years old, I think my parents, I can't reconstruct this completely because both of my parents are deceased, and my grandmother, who's involved in this story, she passed away maybe a year after this happened when I was still young. But anyway, one night, my parents were away. They were probably down in Florida looking for jobs as teachers for better pay. My grandmother gets me up in the middle of the night. I'm in my pajamas. She's in hers. She's got a house coat on and bedroom slippers. And she slings me, Janet, over her shoulder, gently, lovingly, carries me out the back door, down the steps, across the dusty backyard, across the street behind the pecan factory, and into a cornfield. And so as we're going through this corn, what I see, or what I saw, was that the corn was higher than Grandma's head. So it must have been like in June or July when the corn was about ready to be picked. And we come into this open area where the corn's all been smashed down in a big wide circular area. It's probably from my visual, from my memory, it's probably about 100 feet across. And there was a group of 10 or 15 folks there, and they were all middle-aged or elderly. Men were wearing like dungarees or overalls, and the women were wearing simple country clothes. And my grandma just walks up and doesn't say anything to him, stands next to him holding me, and then the dark sky just starts to light up. And it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. I can't really see what's going on because I'm facing backwards away from this, but I can tell, looking sideways, that these people are just like suddenly they're statues. They're frozen in place. And all of a sudden this area just lights up. Well, Grandma turns around, and there is this, it's like an 80-foot wide, pure white sphere, and the light's coming from everywhere on its surface. It's not touching the ground. It's about a foot off the ground. It's just silent, and it's just there. It's just hanging there above the ground, not touching the ground. And this hatch opens. A man comes out, and he's a tall man, maybe over 6 foot tall, light to medium brown hair, got a blue shirt and pants and some kind of boots on. He's got a silver belt. The shirt is outside the belt. The pants, and the belt is over that. And he walks up to my grandmother, and my grandmother hands me over. And the gentleman sets me down. And I don't remember at that age, Janet, being particularly real frightened of strangers, but I knew enough even then, you just don't walk off with a stranger. And so, he put his hand in mine, and he, started to lead me towards the ship. And I felt totally comfortable. I had total trust in him. And then there's this woman standing in the doorway. She's about his height. She's got short brown hair on the sides and long in the back, same kind of clothing. And they take me on board, close the little door. I'm not worried that Grandma's on the outside and I'm on the inside. I feel comfortable. And they take me up a couple of flights of stairs to like the third level, and there are windows all the way around on that third level. They're rectangular windows, and they pushed a little box or something up next to the window so I could stand on it. And I watched out the window as the people on the ground grew smaller and smaller and smaller. And I didn't have a feeling that we were going up or anything. I just could see them descending, and then I could see these little lights on the ground below, and they got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then things got darker and darker and darker. And all I remember is they introduced themselves, his name, and I can't say it the way he said it. I can't pronounce it. It's like my high school French. I had 5 years of high school and college French. Right. I love the French language. It's a beautiful language. My tongue can't make the sounds. I can read it, but I can't speak it. And so his name, he introduced himself as Hal Derp, and her name was Miyam. And Hal Derp and Miyam. And I went to bed.
Miyam.
Meyam, Meeyahm is the way I spell it.
Yahm, Meyam.
And Haldor is
Okay, go ahead. Haldor is
Haldurp.
Okay, Haldor and Meyam. Now, let me go back over. What were they wearing again? You said at night that you were breaking up a little bit. What were they wearing? They were wearing. Were they wearing a suit or what were they? Yeah.
No, I mean it was. It wasn't like you think of a spacesuit. It was. It was just normal clothing. They wore a soft material. It had a little pattern in it. It was very dark blue, but it had a pattern in it. They had both wore pants. They both had a shirt or a blouse on that was not tucked in the pants. It hung over, and then they had a belt outside of that, a silvery colored belt. He had, and she may have too, and I just don't remember, but he had a golden W emblem on his. It was like a little brooch or pin on his left chest, and I came to realize after the first time I thought about that or saw it, I came to realize that it was a golden serpent, and that comes into the story later on too. So.
Oh wow. Okay, so you're on the ship. Sorry, thanks for spelling that out for me. So you're on the ship.
Yes.
What's going on?
Well, I must have gone to sleep. They had a little room for me on the second level. There weren't any windows there. They had a little bed prepared for me. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and they were upstairs, so I went upstairs, and there was this very large red ball in the window surrounded by complete black or blackened stars. And now I know it was Mars. That's not what they called it. Obviously, they wouldn't call it Mars. But and it was growing bigger in the window by every minute. And we came in over Mars, descended over it, came in over this big cleft in the ground, which now I'm sure it was the valley, what they call the valleys of Valles Marineris. It's this huge canyon that's bigger than the Grand Canyon. And there was another white sphere ship just like ours about a mile beneath us and maybe 2 miles ahead of us. I could see that out the window, and so we skimmed along the above the valley, and then we crossed over one of the big volcanoes. I'm guessing it was Olympus Mons. It took us a long time to go over that. It's a huge volcano, and then we landed somewhere. We got out. I was allowed to walk around, and we didn't have suits. What they had, Janet, it was like a gel. It was like a living gel that they touched it to you, and it just formed itself around your body, covered you, a couple inches thick, and you could breathe through this. And I remember the gravity there feeling unsteady at first, but we walked around for a while. I thought it was a beautiful place. I just thought it was interesting and beautiful. When we left there, I remember passing over and descending on the Cydonia region. I remember seeing the five-sided pyramid and the big face. And we were coming in, and that's all I remember. I think that was blocked. Whatever, if we landed, if we got out, if we went somewhere there, it was all blocked. I haven't remembered anything about it. So that, again, if I ever did regressive hypnosis, that's something I would want to look into. We left there, that'd be awesome. And I would be fascinated to figure out what that was all about. And did we go inside one of the structures?
My husband and I do hypnosis, and we might be able to, arrange a session for you, even long distance. We've been doing it lately. Because we talk to all kinds of experiencers and military pilots, people, and we're just helping to get the story. This is fascinating. Okay, so you went past Cydonia and the big face, and yeah, continue. Go ahead.
And then we're off, and I think some days must have passed before we reached their world. I also just have a glimpse or a memory of passing very, very near to the sun. I'm guessing that there must have been some sort of stargate or portal involved near the sun. Just a guess. I don't remember. That's just my speculation. But at any rate, some days later, I woke up in the morning. I ran upstairs. We were coming in over their world. We were just maybe a mile or two above the surface. It was very green, very watery world, just like Earth. The gravity's pretty similar. And what happened was essentially I spent like 20 years with them. When they brought me back at the end of that period of time, I grew up there. When they brought me back, they brought me back the same night I left. They brought me back the same night I left at the same age. So kind of like, I guess since I've heard about the other folks with these 20 and back experiences with, Secret Space Force or whatever. See, I wasn't a part of any of that, but it must have been a very similar thing. That was the time travel part of my story. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how that's possible, because it seems like it would mean that I was back on Earth growing and developing on another timeline in another place at the same time. I just don't understand how that could work. But I'm guessing maybe there's some physics there that we just haven't arrived at.
Well, the 20 back super soldiers say that they spend 20 years and they get returned literally back to where they were taken, out of their beds or wherever it was, back into their original form, and they get up, they go have breakfast with their family back in 1955 or 58. It was like, but then it's like they have to adjust to it. Like, oh my goodness, I just had 20 years of living and now I've got to go be normal. It's interesting that it happened in 58. I had a major event in 58 as well. I was 4.
Oh,
that was
okay.
Yeah, but I won't go into mine. But I just major event, But I don't think I was taken for 20 years. And I had a friend that had the same thing that you're talking about, and she told me about this in 1969. She told me about a city in Ohio. Same thing. It was like they were being called, and they all walked out, and they were all frozen. And then the UFO came, and I never got to go into her story. I didn't have, know what I know now. But same thing. And then she went back the next day, and nobody in the neighborhood remembered, but she went back the next day, and the military, they had put tape around. They were doing stuff there. So the military knew about it. And it was the same thing, like a farm field in Ohio.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'd love to hear her story. That's amazing. I'd love
to. But I'll try to find her and she told me this back in 1969 or 70, because we were, anyway, she ended up being my foster sister. So, but that's why I was struck by your story. It's like, I heard this one in 1969, 50 years ago, and it's like, wow. Yeah, so continue. So you don't know how you did this. You came back, you were brought back to your grandmother. Your grandmother's babysitting you. Yeah. And what happened next?
Well, everything was blocked from my memory, and so I'll get into that a little bit too in the story. But I've got more to tell as far as that world if you want me to go into it. When we landed,
let's go into the world.
Okay, when we landed there, this was not a large city. It was a smaller settlement. It was surrounded by a lot of agricultural land, some forests, and it's like everybody's dwelling was connected. It was almost like a big one-story apartment complex, but the buildings were made of, it appeared to be a continuous stone surface. It wasn't made up of little bricks or anything like that. It was just almost as if something had been fused and made this great big settlement, this great big facility where everybody lived. Everybody had their own little home or apartment or whatever. And there was a big community center meeting hall. Somewhere near there was some sort of center where the focus of this community was somehow on communication with their people on other worlds, their people on Earth. And I don't know if this involved, I never saw it. I never saw their technology. That's one thing. Or if I did, it's been blocked from my mind. The things I don't remember are their technology. I don't remember any weaponry they might have had. I don't remember their language. And it's probably good they blocked that, because that's one of the primary things the MyLabs people tried to get from me later on. I also found out later on that there were 70 of us, children from Earth, from different nations, from different parts of the globe, same relative age. We were all taken at the same time. And the purpose, we were part of an experiment. I learned later that I had genetic relationship to them, and so did all these other children. We weren't really hybrids, but somehow we'd been modified. And so we were in a sense, we were spending time with our people. And I wasn't ever indoctrinated. I wasn't told, this is your mission, we're sending you back to Earth to do this and this and this. It's just, I grew up, and by osmosis, I just absorbed their social values, their principles. And I learned too, Janet, that this world was a world around a star in Cassiopeia, but these were Tausetians. They had relocated from Tausetia. And I just want to read something that I came across a couple of weeks ago on a website called Consciendo Sodalitas. I'm not sure exactly. I'm probably not saying that right. I'm butchering it. But at any rate, it is a description of the Tausetians, and it's based on supposedly one that was captured after a crash, a military, and I think they called him Hank. And apparently the Tausetians, their value or their mission is raising awareness of how to deal with the subversion by dangerous extraterrestrial races, identifying corrupt elites and institutions, uplifting human consciousness, and developing strategies for treating advanced mind control techniques. The global solutions they are associated with include exposing government and financial corruption, elite manipulations, deprogramming mind control, promoting multidimensional consciousness, and conflict resolution. You know, what I remember about them is they were a very moral people. They didn't have prisons like we do. They didn't have people committing those kind of crimes. They would argue, they would disagree, they would have factions sometimes, but they seemed to have a way of dealing with those things, so they never really accelerated. Haldorf and Miam were, they didn't have marriage as we do, but once you become a partner, you're a partner for life. They found a way to make those relationships work. There wasn't really divorce as we know it. So, I mean, they were basically a really good people. You know, I remember appliances in the place we lived in their home, but there weren't any power cords or there weren't any sockets or anything. So somehow, I'm guessing that these things must be self-powered, free energy, something along those lines. There were two other kinds of beings there. Yeah. Well,
the thing you were reading, can you send me that link later, what you were reading?
Sure.
About,
yeah.
You found it on another website? Yeah,
yes, I'll send it to you.
Later. You don't have to do it now. Yes, okay. So you're immersed in your civilization, and there were other species there. Go ahead. What were the other species?
Yeah. Well, one of them was a group of energy beings. They were pure energy. They looked like a sphere, a white light, a sphere of living light, and they would hover, fly. They had no arms or legs or anything like that, or face or anything. They were just pure white light. I think some of the Chalcedians could, or Cassiopeans, that's not what they call themselves. Obviously, that's an Earth perspective, but I think some of them could communicate with them by telepathy, but they didn't have feelings the way we do. They didn't speak. I don't know how to describe it. They were just utterly different. One of the things that they did, which was amazing to me, is they had the ability to create patterns in like the ground, in grassy areas or in the crops. They made crop circles. The other thing they did is there were these, in the community there were these beautiful murals. There were these beautiful, like, carved 20-foot by 30-foot wooden scenes of big epic historical scenes that were carved by these energy beings. And the third group was, this is where I got the name Chaligan. They were Cherokee, and of course the name for Cherokee in their tongue is Chaligi, Psaligi. And there was a settlement there of several hundred Cherokee. They had been at some point rescued from Earth by these people before they were going to be massacred. And I thought for the longest time, okay, now this is something that my brain has just put together on its own, and it can't be true. But I don't know if you've ever heard of a lady called by the name of Artie Six Killer Clark. She's a Native American.
What's the first name you said? Artie or Archie?
Artie, A-R-D-Y. A-R-D-Y. She's got a couple of books out. She's very fascinating.
What's her last name?
She's a Native
Artie
Six Killer Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E. And she's written a number of books where she's investigated the relationship of Native Americans to the Star People. And there are some amazing accounts. She's a college professor, I think at Montana State. She may be retired now, but when she had time, and when she would go on recruiting visits for students and things like that, she would always bump into people that had stories about the Star People. And some of them had been on craft before. Some of them had these beings come and talk to them and speak to them. But one of the stories she recounts is in Alaska. I don't remember. I think this was in the 1960s. I should remember the details, but there were like over 1,000 Aleuts. That's the Native American, one of the groups in Alaska, that just completely disappeared one night from their village, their reservation. I mean, people went in, the stoves were still on, the TVs were on, the lights were on, and everybody was gone. And nobody knows what happened to them. I'm sure they were taken. And the same thing with
stories like that.
Yeah. Well, the cliff dwellers out in Arizona, the archaeologists say they just practically disappeared overnight, didn't leave. It's like they left everything there, like they were going to be there for weeks and months and years more, but they just disappeared.
Well, that ties in with quickly. Just do a little aside here. I've been going to this other planet, and I saw all this identity buildings, and I'm working with some group. They're kind of off the side. I don't really see them, but it's telepathic communication. And I said, well, this is a shame. We have all these homeless people in here. Why don't we, let them live in these beautiful buildings that have been abandoned because those populations disappeared. And then I go back the next week, and there's all these people, like hundreds of thousands of people. And then I get back the next week, and I see that they've repaired the buildings, they're living in them, and they're having a big street there, and I'm going, wow. So maybe it's true, because I was just going, well, that was interesting. We're doing some kind of relocation program, but you're telling me about these relocation programs, so maybe they're really going on. That's exciting. Thank you. Yeah, back to you.
Well, again, and my understanding were that there were other groups of people from Earth and from some other worlds too that had been relocated there, and they were living alongside cities or settlements of the Chalcedians. There was a gentleman of the Cherokee. His name was Joseph. He was an older gentleman, very kindly man, real weather-worn face, long gray hair, and he kind of took me under his wing. He called me his little goose, and I think he called me that because I was clumsy, and but some of the other boys there in his tribe were kind of jealous of me because I got so much of his attention. He was apparently somebody they all wanted to be apprenticed to. And I went with them, camped in the woods and hunted with them. They ate, more meat. The Chalcedians were more vegetarian. They ate very little meat. Sometimes they would use it to flavor their vegetables or their fruit dishes, but it was pretty rare, and if they did eat meat, it was mostly fish. So they very, very rarely ever had an animal killed in order to provide a meal. It just wasn't part of their culture. When I got to be when I was a teen, in my later teen years, there was a really weird incident that happened. Again, there's a lot of time there, and I'm sure one day maybe I'll remember more of this. I hope I am able to remember more of the incidents that happened there. But one day I'm with Haldor, and we're outside near the community center, and there are these children playing in this one little area on a paved area. And he looks down and gasps, and I turn, and there's this 7 or 8 foot long golden snake or serpent, and it's just headed right towards him. And this young man shows up with long blonde hair, and he gets between them and the snake, and then he starts kind of drawing it off, and it follows him. And I'm pretty frightened at this point because I have no idea what's going to happen. And I'm starting to go forward, and Haldorf's holding me back. And this guy takes off, and the snake follows him. And, I can't get Haldorf to tell me anything else. And then, like, sometime later, a group of young men come back, and they're carrying this guy's body. And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, he sacrificed himself for these kids. Well, a week or two later, I see the guy again. And I'm almost afraid to ask, how could this be? What was going on there? Well, a couple of years later, and this was a very hush-hush part of, let me just back up just a second, because I want to say that that one of the things that they did, they were a people who really enjoyed music and dancing and community together. They just had great dancing nights and parties that they wouldn't get drunk or, use drugs to have any experiences per se. They did have wine, and I think every once in a while somebody would get tipsy, unintentionally, but they just enjoyed life. It was just, amazing how much they just enjoyed life and celebrations. And but anyway, when I was almost before my return to Earth, Haldor Pamian came to me and they explained to me that the whole thing about the golden serpent, and that it was a ceremony, a rite of passage that they all went through, and that essentially what happened is you would go through this whole ceremony, you would dress in this certain robe and in the community center, and this serpent would show up, and the snake would bite you. And the venom would cause you to have, it wouldn't kill anybody, but it would cause you to have hallucinations. It would sort of like an Indian, I don't know, sweat lodge ceremony or something, where you get in touch with your...
It's like an infusion. It takes you on a sacred journey, a spiritual journey.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was like. And so eventually I consented to it. I wasn't real crazy about letting the thing bite me. Mm-hmm. But when we got there, they prepared me. There were words said over me. Everybody was there watching. They were all dressed up. And Haldor... No, actually it was Miyam. She opened the collar of my robe, exposing my left shoulder and collarbone, and then the snake was there, and it reared up and looked me in the eye, and then before I could even move, it struck, and it stung. I don't think there was any great pain, but then I just became woozy, and I passed out, and there, I was out for days, and apparently because I'm human, more human than they were, it had a worse effect on me than they thought I was actually going to die. They were pretty afraid. When I would come in and out of consciousness, they would be bathing me down with, mopping my brow, trying to cool me off. I had a fever, and finally I recovered. But it was really strange. I had all these weird dreams about flying, about facing, these evil people, and they did tell me, after I recovered, they said, that our people on Earth that are undercover there, they have been monitoring what's going on in your governments and so forth, and it's very bad, because your government, they're evil people that have wormed their way into power. They're the ones that really control the governments of the earth. It's all secret. They're not good people. They're takers and not givers. Because for them, to be a leader was to be a servant leader. They had a king, and I saw their king several times, but he wasn't dressed in fancy robes or anything. You wouldn't even know he was the king if you were visiting there like me, unless somebody said, "Oh, that's the king." The only time he dressed up was when they had celebrations. Servants.
They're not there for their own power and money and hoarding wealth. They are truly public. They're in service. They talk about if you're going to ascend, you have to be at least 51% in service for others. So these people are in service to their people.
Yeah.
They're like a living public service. Oh, I want to remember where you are. I just wanted to add real quick that I'm living in Hawaii, and one time, and I don't sleep with underwear, so I got up and I got bit on my foot by a what do you call that? Not a serpent, oh God, it just threw the name. It's the long centipede, right? And I came downstairs, and my husband was there, and I started. It was so painful, and I'm like, tears are just rolling down my face. And I went into a shamanic journey, like he did. And he said, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" I said, "No, this seems familiar. I'm just going to ride it out." And same thing. I was down all day. People came and helped me like pee once in a while and made sure I had fluids, but I just was on a journey. And it's powerful. But I wonder. Yes, I've done this ritual, but here on Earth. But I think because I wasn't afraid, I must have done it before. Because it's like, oh no, I've done this before. Just let me. You don't have to take the emergency. It would be worse.
Wow.
Subjecting me to all the emergency stuff. I said, no, I'll be fine. And now I don't remember what I learned, but I was just going through it because that was like 15, 20 years ago now. But did you come away with any kind of understanding, greater understanding of? Well, I think in general it goes into your being a different person. Once you've done that type of journey work, you're a more conscious spiritual person. You know, you're aware of the realms. You can walk existence through other realms. Just like, you know, they talk about a lot of natives do like ayahuasca and peyote ceremony thing. Wow, so that's great. So you agreed to do it, and they were concerned, but yeah, I guess in Africa they do ibogaine, and sometimes the boys die. They put the children, especially the young boys, through their ibogaine ceremony, and some of them do die. But that's ibogaine. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. So back to you. So they enjoyed music and dancing.
Yeah, I mean they just love life, and they weren't a dishonest people. I mean, and that's what truly bothered him about Earth. I mean, I've heard other friends talk about. I have a friend who he channels this galactic group of council or something, and then I have other friends who've been like in communication with things like that, and the general message which you hear is that there are some sort of federation of aliens that are out looking over the Earth, and I'm not really sure how that all works out personally. Maybe I haven't studied it enough, but at any rate, yeah. So they were concerned about the way, the secrecy, the CIA, and they were concerned about the world I was going back to, and they warned me. And just as they warned the other 69 of the 70, they warned them that we were going back into this corrupt world and that we were going to be lights, and that at some point we would be activated, but they were going to have to put us, so to speak, to sleep. Our memories were going to go to sleep. And so, I was brought back, and for all of my existence up until last year, I didn't remember any of this.
Wow,
even when I was
a year.
Yeah, just a year. And even when I was taken by the military people, the paramilitary people in '73, they wanted me to remember this stuff, and they couldn't get it out of me because it wasn't that I was trying to hold it back. It was buried, and they just didn't have the technology.
Well,
they didn't have.
They didn't want you. They didn't want. The Tau City did not want that government to get the memories, right? They didn't.
Yeah, and I'll explain that in just a little bit if you want me to, because I'm kind of at the point now where I go into the MyLabs part of it. I got to take a sip of water.
So,
my whistle's kind of dry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, take it. Well, this is a very relaxed show. We're not that structured. So this is fascinating. Now, have you ever looked on the internet to see pictures of the Tau City and do the representations? Did you just do an image search? Do they look like the Tau City that you saw when you look at the representations of?
Well, the ones I've seen, the drawings and depictions I've seen, the haircut's right. They a lot of the folks had kind of like the page boy kind of cut or the Caesar kind of cut. I think they tend to depict them as their skin being much, much darker than I remember it. I just thought they had a good suntan, and the drawings I see on the internet, they're pretty dark skinned, not like African, not or even Middle Eastern, but very, very Mediterranean, very dark skinned Mediterranean. And it may be
I'm
just
looking at some that looks kind of almost. I'm looking right now. I just did a quick search, and they have them. They have a good tan. They look like the page boy haircuts. They're wearing the blue suits. They have big eyes. The eyes look. I can't see what color the eyes are.
Eyes.
Did you see eye colors? What color eyes did they have?
Well, that was the only thing that struck me as being, other than them being taller than people I remembered from Earth. I mean, they weren't giants, but they were 6 to 7 foot tall when they were adults. But they had very, very, very light pigmentation in their eyes. I mean, his eyes were a very light kind of bluish color, and hers were a very, very light brown, almost a yellow. And everybody's eyes there, some had a grayish color, but their eyes were very light in color. So yeah, it was different. That was the only thing really that struck me as peculiar. But they were, they were wonderful people. I'm sure if any of them are hanging out
later, yeah. So I'm going to try to illustrate this for the show page. Yeah, great. Okay, so
I'm sure if any of these folks are hanging out here, I'm sorry.
When they returned you, how did you feel? But go ahead. If there are folks hanging out here, go ahead. Finish that sentence.
Okay. Well, so anyway, they returned me, and all my memories were blocked. I grew up a normal kid, went through high school, graduated, went to college and dental school, and lived a normal life. The only thing that really I thought was strange was kind of midway through my senior year of high school, just overnight I fell into a really, 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 really deep depression. But it was more than that. It was like I felt like my soul and my body had been separated. And this just went on, Janet, for years and years and years. And I mean, I'm telling you the truth. I didn't even begin to really feel completely whole again until these memories started coming to me. I don't understand fully how the memories have helped me recover that, other than maybe, I don't know. I just don't know. But I feel so much more spiritually, soulfully healthy now than I did before the memories came. And what I remember now is that at the same time in my senior year in high school, one night I was taken by a group of 6 men. 5 of them were wearing black uniforms, not a typical military uniform, but black fatigues. And one of them had a white uniform on, like a Navy corpsman. And they took me and they were pulling me into a white van. And this white garb fellow, like a Navy corpsman, he had a hypodermic syringe. He injected my right shoulder, and I get this really bitter taste in my mouth, and then I went out. And then I wake up, I'm in this facility, this underground facility somewhere in the far west. I'm strapped to a table. I've got an IV in my arm. And I'm waking up, and I'm looking at this gentleman in a white lab coat. He's kind of a crusty old guy, and he introduces himself as Brown. That's all he tells me. He says, "I'm Brown, just Brown." And he says, "We're going to give you some tests." And there was a corpsman there, and he did something to my IV. I don't know if he gave me something to make me less groggy, because I was able to function for a while afterwards. But what they did is they put in front of my right eye kind of it looked almost like a periscope, and they had me look into it. And at the same time, they put some sort of net on my head that was like kind of like when they do an electroencephalogram of somebody who's had a seizure. The neurologist puts this on the head. It's a little net with sensors. And so they had me wired up with that. And I think I had like electrocardiogram things on too. And they started flashing images in this periscope over my right eye, and they were like symbols. They were like hieroglyphs and runes and letters and strange shapes. And there were probably every second there would be like 3 or 4 of them. I mean, they were bang, 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 bang. They were just coming. And I kept saying, what am I supposed to do? And he kept saying, be quiet, don't say anything, just watch. And at the end of about 4 or 5 minutes of this, he said, oh, wow, very, very good. And then they switched it over to my left eye and did the same thing. They were projecting these symbols. And I guess they were looking for some sort of neurological response, like a recognition or something, without me actually vocalizing it. I mean, to me, I didn't think I recognized any of this stuff, but apparently to his satisfaction, I did. And so over a period of some days and weeks, they took me off the medications, gave me a little more freedom each day, and they began to test me on recognitions of symbols. They had a whole library, Janet, of, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of books. Like,
wow.
I'm not putting down Freemasonry, but a lot of the books were Rosicrucian and Freemasonic symbols. Some of them were occult symbols. Some of them were German. I think they were like Vril and Nazi symbols. And at any rate, they seemed to think that I had some unique gift given to me by somebody. And I think they thought it was these Chalcedians to assimilate and process these symbols and recognize certain patterns. They never explained this to me. They just gave me tasks to do. They kept me busy 8 to 10 hours a day. They never really told me exactly what they were looking for. Over time, I sort of came to realize that most of these people that worked with me, they weren't. I don't think they were really military. Now, there were a lot of people there that wore Navy uniforms, kind of the tan, kind of khaki tan uniforms. But I don't think they were really Navy. I think they were some sort of group or intelligence service or offshoot. I think they were just wearing a naval uniform just so that anybody else that was down there thought they were military. But they were a very occult group, a very dark group. And I came to find out later that they call themselves disciples of the Black Sun, which, again, I don't even today know really a lot about that, although I think the symbologies associated with Nazism, there were World War II German scientists and officers there. I mean, so I think this facility was in New Mexico. It might have even been under White Sands, because a lot of the German rocket scientists and the medical doctors were brought to the White Sands area and the El Paso area after World War II. So, and this wasn't that much longer after that. It was like maybe 30 years after that. So, at any rate,
Peter Moon. I've had Peter Moon on, and he wrote a book about the Black Sun. Yeah, I'll have to go look that up and see what. I think I've got his book. I haven't. Yeah, I think I've got his book. I haven't read it all. I started some time ago and got distracted. I met Sev Tak a couple of months ago. Yeah. She said she was on your show. Yeah, and one of the things in her story was that after she met her current boyfriend, he had to do some work at the White Sands Army base in New Mexico for the government or some kind of contract that he was on, and they were in Hawaii at the time too, I think. But they flew there. She flew out to meet him, and he took her to the White Sands Army base there. And in her book, she describes how she just suddenly had this very deep oppression come over her, and she just wanted to get away as fast as she could. And he thought, hey, look at this rocket they tested there. He was walking her through the museum, but she felt like she was on fire or something. She had to get away from there. And I still haven't really had a chance to discuss whether she felt that way because something was evil there,
which it would make a lot of sense if where I was taken wasn't very far away. But
right.
At any rate, so this group of people, they, after, I was only with them a couple of years, I think 5. It wasn't like the 20 years. And again, they brought me back to the same day they took me, the same time. I was the same age, and my memories were blocked. But I think they must have brought me back like in a clone body, because I had so much trouble after that experience. And that's why I've just had so much trouble in my adult life with this feeling that I've been ripped apart inside. At any rate,
I've had that feeling too, and I work with a lot of clients, and I call that the strange in the strange land phenomenon. It's like you just
exactly.
you don't quite feel like you belong anymore. You're missing, like you're missing relatives. You're missing. Oh,
yes.
And now you're shedding a new light on it. So you were actually gone for 20 years, and you were ripped away from your family because you grew to love them. They were your people, and all of a sudden you're back here, and now you're not really bonded with your Earth family, because now you have to bond with your Earth family now because they're back. Yeah, so boy, that has to play with you emotionally and psychologically. And okay, so back to
at some point, they came to. I remember Brown and an Air Force colonel that I would see there a lot. They came to me, sat me down, and they said, "Well, look, you have an aptitude that we've been looking for. You have the ability to connect these symbols and languages and letters, and this is very important to us, the project we're working on. If you will join with us, we're going to make sure that you have mentors all along the way in your life. We want you to become involved with like Rosicrucianism or, Freemasonry. Not that that's going to be the end point, but they wanted me to get involved with that. They said also we'd like you to stay involved with your church, just for a front. But they said the most important, and they said, you're gonna meet powerful people. You're gonna know judges and politicians and stars and celebrities, and you're gonna be wealthy. Now they said you're not gonna be, one of our big people. You'll be mid-level. That's the best you're ever gonna do, but you're gonna have more than you could ever imagine. And I knew there was a catch, and they said, but what you have to do, you have to prove yourself to us. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to rid yourself of any empathy, any human empathy towards other human beings. And I'm like, what? And they said, you have to be willing, coldly, dispassionately to kill another human being if we tell you that's what you're supposed to do. And you cannot have any feelings. If it's a child, if it's an older person, if it's a woman, you have to be ready to do that. But the upside of it is that, like we said, you're going to have everything you want. Well, I rejected their offer. And they said, well, you really want to think about this, because if you don't take our offer, then we're going to ruin your life. And I said, well, why not just kill me? And they said, no, we can't do that. There was some sort of understanding they had because of the Chalcedian genetics in me that they weren't allowed to actually kill me. They could torture me, but they weren't allowed to kill me. And so they said, but we can induce you to do the deed yourself. And I think over the years they implanted that thought. My friend Misha Johnson says that, they have like a suicide protocol that they program into you, and they can activate that. And I don't know if that's what they did to me, but towards the end, they were, they were using all sorts of drugs on me. They were doing sleep deprivation, sensory deprivation. They were applying electrical charges to me. They were testing out crowd control weapons on me. They had this one that was like a big box. It was about 4 feet across, like a cube, and the front side of it was a plexiglass window, and they suspended my arms over my head and restrained me, and this thing was about 30 feet away, and there would be a pulse, and you'd see it light up behind that plexiglass. And then at the same moment, it was just like somebody punched you as hard as they could in the stomach or on the shoulders or wherever they aimed this thing. And they would just beat me black and blue with this thing. And
wow.
They did some things that I don't know if any children are listening, if you want me even to go into describing, but they did some terrible things to me.
No, this is an adult, pretty much an adult platform, so, I mean, just don't use the F-bomb.
Well, one of the worst things they did to me is to try to break me is this group of guys, and I don't think they were Navy SEALs, but that's who they told me they were. There was a group of about 4 guys that dragged me into this room and opened up this hatch in the floor. It was like a big shower room, and they opened up this hatch, and they put a scuba mask on me and a regulator. No, they didn't give me a mask. It was just a regulator, just a breathing thing, and strapped it on my head, and they threw me in this hole, and it was a septic tank. It was just full of human waste, and they kept me in that for 24 hours. And I mean, I can't even describe how terrible that was. I mean, just the passage of time, it seemed like years, and I knew I was going to die. And they dragged me up out of that hole, threw me on the ground, sprayed me down with this, it was like a fire hose. And then these guys urinated on me just for the heck of it and laughed at me and mocked me, and they told me I was, manure, except in a little bit more strong language. And, I mean, they would do stuff like this. I almost died from that, though. I got an infection, and they had to keep me on very powerful IV antibiotics for a couple of weeks because I got a bloodborne infection from it. And they were really pissed at the guy that started that got fired. And then one day, Saunders, who was followed up for, I guess it was Brown that got fired. Saunders was the new guy in charge of me, and he came to me and he said, "Okay," because he knew I'd been keeping myself in pretty good shape. I used to run in high school. I used to run distance for track, and so I'd run 15, 20 miles every other day. And they had an indoor track, and they let me run on it. And so he took me outside, handed me a canteen, and he pointed me towards this little mountain range about 3 miles away, and he said, "It's 12 noon, the sun's going to set in so many hours, and if you can make it over that range to the other side, there's a highway, and we'll let you go." Well, I knew they weren't going to let me go because they, I knew too much. But he said, "Yeah, honestly." Well, it was worth a try. So I took off running, and I ran and made it across this terrain. It was a lot of little creosote bushes, and we had a lot of those in southern New Mexico, so that's why I'm thinking it could have been the same area. I got to the foothills, and I started climbing and ascending, and the day wore on, and I wasn't in as good a shape as I thought, and I drank all the water. I was starting to get dehydrated, starting to get out of breath, and wasn't used to that altitude because I'd been down on the ground for so long, and I'm climbing up the side of this mountain range, and it was getting to be, the end of the afternoon, and I'm about 2/3 of the way up, and I felt like all of a sudden that somebody was watching me, and I turned around, and there was, and this is a memory that came to me when I was driving home one night. I nearly literally drove off the side of I-95 because it was such a powerful image of this 60-foot diameter saucer just soundlessly hanging in the air about 40 feet from me. And I could see somebody looking through one of the porthole windows, and it was a gray alien. There was some kind of collaboration with the grays going on there, and I just stood there frozen, looking at this thing, and then I don't remember anything else other than I do remember briefly waking up inside of it, and then I'm back in my room down underground. So they never intended to let me go. But there was another time after they started to abuse me that one of the corpsmen decided to help me escape, and he got me up to the surface in a thing of towels that they were going to process in a little laundry that they had nearby. And he got me into the back of his little, I forget what those little cars were called, Chevy Novas or something. And he drove me out, and it was getting dark. And he said he had a wife and 2 daughters, and he just knew that this was immoral. And he knew he was going to be in trouble. He'd probably go to jail for this, but his conscience couldn't stand it any longer. So we got to talk, and he told me he was Catholic, and we're driving for a couple hours. It's getting dark. There's this, just down this old dirt road, and he was going to turn left and cut over to this main highway. And this was the mountain range that I was supposedly going to escape over. And then there was, all of a sudden, we came on this roadblock, and the guys in the black uniforms were there, and there was a helicopter on the ground. There were cars, military vehicles, and the back, the doors open up, and these guys slide in behind us. No, it wasn't a Nova because it had 4 doors. It was some kind of old junker car. I don't remember, but these 2 guys sat down behind us, and the next thing I know, I've got a gun pointed in the back of my head, and so does he. His name was David Griggs. And the next thing I know, there's this bang, this loud bang, and my ears were ringing, and the windshield's cracked in front of him, and his brains are just, his blood, everything is all over the windshield. And I'm hyperventilating, and I hear the gun go click behind me, and there wasn't a bullet in the chamber. And they dragged me out. Somebody jammed a needle in my arm to sedate me. I'm going out, and they put me on a stretcher, and I didn't go completely out. They put me up in this helicopter into a Huey, and the Huey took off, and there were all these people gathered around the car, and they were photographing his body in the car, and I just at some point passed out, and I wake up, and I don't know if they staged that. I don't even know if that was real. But he seemed legitimate to me, and so I think they legitimately killed him. And so many times I've thought about that, and I've just gotten sick over it. Sometimes I just get emotional. I'm kind of getting better about talking about it, not getting emotional. But at any rate,
well, they do. You said you couldn't have postulated that question if there wasn't something there. They do stage things. They want to see what your emotional reaction is. They want to see where you're going to go with your logic. So one time I had a client, and they were put in a room with a big barrel in the middle of the room. It was a circular room, and 2 small children. We didn't know the children. So then the door opens, and then a snarling alien comes, just like a monster. And it starts chasing him around and around and around. And so finally, he ended up putting the 2 children in the barrel, and he sacrificed himself. And then it was dissolved. It was back to normal. It was like, oh, shit.
Wow.
So they do stuff like that.
Well, I'm sure. I wonder if some of the memories I have, if they're implanted memories, if they're not actually real memories, because, and I've talked to Misha about this, because some of the memories I've had more recently were of things that they had broken me, and that I was helping them torture and actually kill other people. And when I first started coming to me, I would just break down crying, because I couldn't hurt another person like that. And I asked her about it, and she said, yeah, she had memories like that too, and you don't know if it's real, and if it is, she said, it's not you, it's an alter, or you're under mind control, and you weren't responsible for it. So, I mean, I'm still wrestling with that, because if I've actually hurt other people, even if I was under mind control, I'm not sure I'm completely willing to absolve myself of guilt. But maybe I have to. The other thing
from what I know, I think you are who you are, in a deep core of yourself. No, there's nothing in the human condition that's alien to any of us. So we have all of it in our repertoire. But as you evolve and grow as a soul, so you start developing a conscience, you start developing. And what they were saying to you earlier is that you're returning to a planet where the people who are ruling this don't care. They don't have a heart, right? They don't care. They're very narcissistic and sociopathic and stuff like that. They're all about themselves. So, I think you're developing consciousness. You're becoming more like the people who raised you, the Cossettis. They didn't kill anybody. They were imprinting that into the core of your being. So you're back here on Earth, and there's all this stuff going on to test your soul, to try to define you, to put them in you in those boxes, and yet you're still emerging with your own self and your own morality. And that's all the best we can do, because there's challenges everywhere. If you can maintain your moral fiber for all the days of your life, then you have arrived. You have accomplished the best thing you can for yourself, at least as a soul.
Yeah. Well, and that's what troubles me so much, is if, I actually did some of those terrible things. I mean, at any rate, I guess what really meshes for me is that about 10 years ago, before I had this awakening, I started doing something I had never done before, and that was looking into some of these things like 9/11 and what really happened with the Kennedy assassination and Martin Luther King and some of these things. And, I mean, I'd been I was an Eagle Scout, Boy Scout. I was, my senior year of high school, the American Legion picked me as their American Legion National Boy Scout of the Year. And, I mean, I was kind of like an all-American kid. I mean, I wasn't like sugar sweet. I got in some trouble. I wasn't perfect. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about the American Legion thing, Janet, was that year their convention was in Honolulu, and so they flew me to their convention, and we took a little side trip over to Maui and to Lahaina, and so that was pretty cool. I had a really great time. But so I was pretty much an all-American kid. I believed in, America. I believed in our government, our military, and everything. And then I started really examining the evidence on 9/11 and some of these things, and I was horrified, because there are evil people behind the scenes, and they control the governments of the earth. And these are just incredibly wicked people. That's who the Chalcedians were warning me about. And I think that's why they took. That's why I think they took the Earth Kids, the 70 of us there, was to just raise us in their culture, and that with the intent of activating us at some point. And I don't know. I mean, they never said, well, here's your mission or here's what you got to do. Maybe that's coming later. I don't know. But I know that all of these things grieve me deeply.
You got it. Whether you've got your mission without them having to verbalize it. It's what drives your soul. It's your passion. So it went in. It went deep, and so you're following it. I got to just before I forget. You've got to watch The Family on Netflix. Oh my God!
The Family.
It's a documentary. It's called The Family. Yeah.
Okay.
On Netflix. It's on right now. It's not. There's two The Families, but this one's a documentary about this group that was outside of Washington. So you have the right one. It's about our government. It's the one about our government.
Oh, okay.
Not about some out family that was in Australia or something. This is the one about our government, and it's like, oh my God. And watch it and then email me, and we'll have a conversation.
Okay.
I'll try to get some other people to watch it, and we'll have a conversation about it, because I think that I've got the same mission. Whatever it is, I'm on. Yeah, that's me. And
Well,
So
do
let's
you feel
continue.
powerless? Do you feel powerless because these people have so much power? They have unlimited resources, it seems like. And even if we expose them, what good does it do?
That, yeah. You know, and
Yeah,
I'm just to have a conversation with my brother and sister tomorrow. I've invited them to watch the family because my brother said, "Oh, what can we do about it? What can we do about it?" It's like, well, you know, well, first we talk about it. I think it'll emerge from the conversations and the ideas. You know, you mentioned David Icke and all that. First thing is discover what's going on. And I think we're more powerful than they want to give us credit for. And once we figure it out, the answer will emerge. I don't have to know everything in this moment, but it's emerging. We're figuring it out.
So.
We're going to figure this out. And first, it's exposure. It's kind of like, you got to find out who's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, right?
Exactly.
And once you know who the Wizard of Oz is, then the whole system starts to shut down. And I think that's what they're afraid. But we have allies, like the Tau-Cetis and many, many other species that want us to join the Federation. See, I was imprinted with Star Trek when I was a kid, and I went to all the conferences. I went to Pittsburgh, and I met Gene Roddenberry. I met J. Allen Hynek and Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov. I'm a year older than you, and I went to these conferences, and I met them, and these movements started, 60 years ago, right, 50 years ago. So we had great hope and optimism, but it takes a long time. See, they're long-lived. They're extremely long-lived. 1,000 years is nothing to them. We're lucky if we get 100. But with our group mind, and we're one generation feeding into the other, we're gonna figure this out, and we're gonna resolve this because the Federation is waiting to welcome us with open arms. And then, the way you describe the Tau-Ceti, they're definitely Federation. They're good Federation. The people that want us to be free from this bondage. Yeah, I digress. Okay.
Well, I was going to say there was one more element I wanted to talk about my time underground, and that's that before I really fell into disfavor, when I was kind of on the fence, they were still playing with me, pushing me to accept their offer. They introduced me to a hybrid, a young hybrid lady amphibian hybrid. She was actually second generation. They called her Felicia, and we really fell head over heels for one another. And I don't think they were quite expecting that, but we had a couple of year relationship, and it was pretty amazing. She was a very intelligent being. She had it wasn't like gills. She had sort of like almost like a dolphin has that little porthole or little opening on the back of their head, like a whale does, that breathing hole. She had something like that, even though she was second generation. Her skin was a turquoise color, and her mother was a first generation hybrid, and she was very intelligent. She was funny, and we just became an experiment for them. And they monitored everything that we did. I mean, they had cameras in my bedroom, and they had cameras everywhere. So everything that happened, they were on top of it. And but when I rejected their offer, they took her away from me, and before they really started torturing me. And right towards the end, they let me see her one more time. And then they told me, before they brought me back, they said that she had gone ballistic and attacked them. She had, her people, there were thousands of them, maybe millions. I think there were actually millions of them in the Pacific Ocean. There were some in the Atlantic. There were most in the Pacific. When we started doing the nuclear tests out at Bikini Atoll and so forth, the radioactivity wiped a lot of them out. And the other thing, the other thing was that the Navy became aware of their presence and hunted them down, and they fought back, and a lot of them died. And there was a small group that were taken prisoners, and that's what her people were part of. And but she went ballistic. And one more thing, she, like an electric eel, her body could generate an electrical charge. And there were times when she really actually shocked me. She didn't mean to, and it was always an embarrassing thing for her. But she literally, when they first started using her, she actually killed a couple of people with the electrical charge, and she went crazy after they started mistreating me, and they let me see her one more time. She went crazy and killed a couple of them, and they killed her with automatic weapons. And
they killed her.
They just matter of fact. They just told me one day, oh yeah, we had to kill her. And I'm sure that was even a setup. But just I'm sorry. It's kind of emotional for me.
Well, they're playing with your emotions, whether these things are.
Well, they're just Deanna, and you know this too. They're just evil. They're just very evil people, and I think when we talk about like the Illuminati and so forth, I think they must laugh, because that's not even scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much deeper, so much worse, so much more evil than anything that we call Illuminati. And but I'm hoping you're right. I'm hoping that as we all become more aware, as we all have encounters with, I guess, consciousness, that eventually something's going to happen that's going to pull the rugs out from under them. I hope that there will be a great fall. That's my hope. That they're not going to be able to hide, forever. Their money's not going to always protect them.
Are you still having contact to this day? Are you still aware of any contact? Or?
Well, it's funny. It's funny. I did have 2 hypnosis sessions, and one of them, the first one I did, was a lady in East Smyrna Beach, Florida, and she's just a wonderful lady. And she kind of challenged me to talk to Hal Derpinian. And I'm like, no, I'm not really kind of into that. That's just, I'm a good little Christian boy, and we don't do that, But I found myself talking to him, and I found that I have answers. I find answers. It's crazy, but they subconsciously counseled me on different things, and they've never challenged my religious upbringing or anything like that. Because I'm one of those kind of people. I'm a Christian, but boy, I get really angry when there's scandals and there's pastors that abuse people and stuff like that. That just boils my blood. That anybody would abuse a child or take advantage of a position of authority like that to hurt people. It just infuriates me. But anyway, so I guess I found myself more and more talking to them. And one thing I didn't mention was that last year in 2018, in the fall of 2018, I had 3 encounters coming home from work on 3 separate days. The first day I was driving home, and then all of a sudden I became aware of a gray alien. And it's like our minds were connected. It was like we were mentally Skyping or something. And I just, I saw things about them, about their inability to have emotions like we do, and yet there's a desire on their part to be able to experience emotions. And from his standpoint or its standpoint, he didn't feel like their mission, what they were doing, was actually hurting human beings, although people describe pain and so forth with, their experiences of being taken. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The next day, I had an experience with Saunders, one of the two handlers I had in the MyLabs thing. And it was like he was sitting at a desk writing, and he looked up and saw me, and I saw him. And he said, "Oh, we were wondering how long it would take you to be able to do this."
Oh, my God.
And all of a sudden, these words just started pouring out of my mouth. And I don't know where this came from, because I just have never wished ill on other people unless they're really wicked people. But I started telling him that he was going to die a very violent death, because, that he could still turn around and change that. And he just got more and more serious. And he told me, he said, "You know what, you're going to pay for this. You're going to pay for this." Because he believed what I was saying. And he said, "You're going to pay for this." And the very next day, I went to work, and all of a sudden my legs just lost all their strength. And I couldn't stand up, and they had to send me home. One of the ladies from work followed me 30 miles home until I got to a medical center, and they could check me out. They couldn't figure out what's going on with me. And I developed a fibromyalgia-type syndrome. I'd be able to work for 2 days out of a week, and then I'd be sick and I couldn't work. Or my brain would be in a fog, and I couldn't even think, let alone get in somebody's mouth and give them an injection and work on their teeth, And this went on and on and on until about 3 months ago. It lasted for 9 months. I ended up having to give up dentistry, and I'm starting a new business on my own, but writing. But I did one night. I asked them for help, and that week I got well, and I'm well now. So, Misha used to tell me she was praying to her galactic family for me or whatever, and I'd kind of snicker. I wouldn't let her hear me snickering, but I'd snicker. But there's something to it. Maybe I'm willing to go there. I'm willing to believe that they're able to monitor us. And I guess I read something about 4 months ago that the scientists were studying how the human brain solves problems. They were neuroscientists, and these weren't believers in consciousness or anything like that. They were just average hardcore scientists, and they said that they came to the conclusion that our brain solves problems on the level of 11 dimensions. That our brain functions on higher dimensions in order just to solve common problems. And I thought, well, maybe that's what some of my friends are talking about when they talk about consciousness. Maybe that's what they're talking about, or being connected to whatever, in the universe.
Well, that makes sense.
Again,
if I hit a brick wall, I just say, well, I'm going to go sleep on this. And then I'm aware sometimes, because I have to get up and see it, that I'm doing something, like I'm solving the problem. It's like, this makes sense. And then I'll awaken and I'll go, okay, well, here's the answer. Now, sometimes it might take 2 or 3 days of doing this. I felt like I'm crunching the computer, right? I'm letting it think about it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. So you were sick, and it may or may not have come from this gentleman that you were kind of remote viewing, and you accessed him, and he went, aha, now we see you. We knew you were going to find us sooner or later, and you're going to pay for it. Right? I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah. Well,
is that what happened?
Yeah. And what else? I guess I forgot this detail, but a couple of weeks, actually a couple of months prior to that, I sort of made when these memories started coming, and I was just confused. I reached out to some other ladies that live here in Central Florida. One of them is Kathleen Martin, and the other one is Denise Stoner. They wrote the book together about the abduction files. They're really wonderful ladies. But every time I got ready to talk to them, I kept hearing in my head, "Don't talk, don't talk, don't talk." And last night, I thought, I'm going to be talking with Janet on the radio. And as soon as I vocalized that, my brain just started being flooded with the most offensive images, just terrible stuff. And I started just trying to make myself think good thoughts, good and worthy thoughts. And last night I just had the most, I haven't been dreaming much lately. I used to dream vividly all the time, but last night I had the most bizarre dreams. I did not sleep well. And this afternoon I thought, man, I better drink some coffee because I'd hate to fall asleep in the middle of this radio thing with Janet. But this has been really kind of fun. I've really sort of enjoyed it.
The dream? See, this is all important because I can't tell you how bizarre my life is. Okay, now I have wonderful dreams. Whoever's taking me or whatever I'm going, they just love me and they nurture me. And I might have a bad day in my human avatar, Janet self, but I go to bed like, oh please. So I'm getting a lot of really good things, but then you and a couple other friends, I get up and I go, oh my God, I feel so bad that everybody's having these bizarre experiences around, coming out of the closet, so to speak. So I'm here to support you, and I want to. I think that we need to. We've got 8 more minutes. We need to look at your dreams last night, if you're willing. Don't say what you don't want to say, but can you give me a couple clues on what you're dreaming? Because everything is important in dreams. So just give me one or two elements of your dreams.
Well, it was just strange. I mean, it was very vivid. There was an incredible amount of detail. Apparently, I was somewhere on the beach somewhere in Florida. It was nighttime. I was with a lot of other people, and my family was looking for me, and they couldn't find me, and I kept wandering through this wooden building. It started out, I walked into this restaurant. Well, it had a back door that led into, of all things, like this Jewish synagogue. I have no idea where that came from. And so I sat in on their service, and I'm halfway through the service, I'm thinking, I sat in this seat here, kind of in front of everybody, and I don't think I was supposed to sit here. This is for like the rabbi or something, and just crazy stuff like that. And then but they were really nice to me afterwards. And then I wandered back to the restaurant, and then I began getting physically sick and vomiting and falling down weak, and then my family again, they were looking for me. They were parked down the beach. I pulled out my cell phone. I couldn't dial their number right. I kept dialing the wrong number. I mean, just nutty stuff like that, and it just went on and on and on. So I don't know. I mean, it was like, it's like that somebody slipped me some LSD last night or something. I have no idea, but it was weird. It was weird.
It sounds like an LSD trip. So everything in a dream is a dreamer, right? So So you're on a beach. You can't find your family, so anyway, I thought that would be a little bit more clear. You could deconstruct it by just going through every element. I had
my daughter
like that too. Yeah, but go ahead.
I was going to say my daughter's really good about that kind of thing, deconstructing those things and finding out what things mean in dreams. So I probably ought to tell her, but one of the things you probably talked to a lot of folks that you've talked to. Have they had, like I've had, the catastrophe dreams, tidal waves and storms and nuclear blasts and things like that? Because I've had some, especially the last year, I've had a lot of catastrophe type dreams. Like impending catastrophe.
If you have lots of water means that your emotions are really high. So you're getting overwhelmed, like the catastrophe where the waves are coming. That's usually an indicator of your own emotional state. And
wow.
so everything,
Okay.
it could be prophetic, and it could be your higher self is trying to help you figure out. So you've got a Jewish synagogue. So what do you like with the Jewish synagogue? So you're not Jewish or something, right? So
no.
So that's something that's unknown to you, the Jewish synagogue, but you're sitting there, you don't know the structure. So you end up sitting in the rabbi's seat.
Yeah, I didn't know
that's
the structure of the
service
or anything. Yeah. And
the rabbi's
it was
leader.
Weird.
So what part of you is a rabbi? What part of you is a spiritual teacher?
That's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wonder if
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe there's all these deeper meanings there, and I didn't really think about it today. But that's possible.
Well, you have a blog. Write it up on your blog, and as you start writing it, you might get deeper meanings.
Okay. All right.
So that's what I find when I have a dream like that, and I don't do this enough. This is advice for me and for you. Just pull out your blog and start writing it up. You don't have to post it, right? You just pull it out and write it, and I bet you'll get more details. But think of it in terms of everything is in a dream is a dreamer. So there's some deeper meaning. Like it seems abstract, like the beach, but imagine, you're on that beach and anyway, I can't really go into this right now because we're running out of time. But that was fascinating. So, are you going to be presenting at any conferences or webinars, or you have this book coming out?
Well,
Let's promote you a little bit here.
Yeah.
What can we do to promote you?
Well, I don't. I really don't know that many people, and I've never done anything like that. So, I'm just hoping to finish writing, my story in this book and get it out. Maybe next month, I'm hoping, and I'll make an announcement on my website, when I'm about ready to get it out. But yeah,
well,
I don't mind talking to people.
Kathleen has a conference down in your part of the world. I'm sure to get your book out, you can at least get on to one of her conferences. They do about once a year down in Florida?
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see you get this out. Get your story out to a wider audience. And so the key is to get your book done. Now, how far are you from publishing?
Well, I've just got to do some editing on it just to make sure I've crossed all the T's and dotted the I's, and I'm probably just going to put it out as a Kindle Direct, Amazon Kindle Direct book, just an ebook. And but I'll put the link up on my website when I get there.
And how many pages do you think it'll be?
Oh, it's not going to be real long. It'll be about 200 pages.
That's a nice size, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bigger books are overwhelming.
Yeah.
And let's go over that title again. How is the title of the book again?
The Chalagan, Unwitting Time Traveler, and Prisoner of the Black Sun.
The Chalagan, okay. And
yeah, I guess.
What does Chalagan mean?
Well, it's. I don't think it's a real Cherokee word, but I got it from, because I do have Cherokee blood in me, and I found that out after I was in my teens. Not a lot. I'm not like real close to being able to claim Native American status or anything, but their language they call themselves Chalagi, which I guess the Europeans heard that and they thought they were saying Cherokee. Chalagi. Cherokee.
Oh, Chalagi. Chalagi.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I highly recommend it, even though it's not done yet. So make sure you get that link out and send that to me when you get the link, and I'll put it up on your webpage. I created a webpage for you, and that'll be an ongoing thing. And your website again? We're going to run out of time. What is your website one more time?
It's thestarsAreMoving.com.
Excellent. It's a nice site. I was checking it out. All right. We're running out of time, so I just want to say to everybody, thank you for joining us today. Much love and blessings and aloha. And join us again next on Sunday as we bring you the Sacred Basis and Revolution Radio. So thank you, Clint, so much for coming on our show today. And we'll have you back again another time. Okay,
thank you,
love and blessings, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.